Why do you hate your parents? The Bank of America statement in my trembling hands showed a balance that made my stomach drop to the floor, $47,832.14 remaining in what should have been my $127,000 college fund. Nearly $80,000. Gone. I sat in my childhood bedroom at 2:47 a.m., surrounded by financial documents I'd finally worked up the courage to steal from Dad's filing cabinet. The house was silent except for Mom's sleep apnea machine whirring down the hall, the same machine they bought last year during their tight budget phase when I was eating ramen for dinner and skipping meals to stretch my grocery money. My grandmother's handwritten will was crystal clear. To my beloved granddaughter Sarah, I leave my entire savings account of $127,000 to be used exclusively for her college education. This money is to ensure she never faces the financial struggles I endured. Grandma Helen had been a Depression-era kid who cleaned houses her entire life, saving every penny she could. She died when I was 17, and Mom cried at the funeral about how Grandma would have been so proud to see me go to college. What a joke. I pulled up my student loan account on my laptop. $89,473 in debt. The monthly payments were already crushing me, and I'd only graduated 3 months ago. My entry-level marketing job paid $34,000 a year, barely enough to cover my studio apartment rent and student loans, let alone food or gas money. I'd been surviving on credit cards, telling myself it would get better once I found a higher-paying job. Meanwhile, my parents had spent the last 4 years telling me how, character building, it was to struggle financially. How taking on student loans would teach me responsibility and gratitude. Dad's favorite line was always, "Nothing worth having comes easy, Sarah. Your grandmother would want you to earn your way." I flipped through more bank statements, my anger building with each page. March 2019, $8,500 withdrawal, 2 days after Mom posted Facebook photos of their anniversary trip to Hawaii. June 2020, $12,000 withdrawal, the same month they renovated their master bathroom with heated floors and a rainfall shower. September 2021, $15,000 withdrawal, right after they bought that boat Dad just had to have. The boat. I remembered that conversation perfectly. I called them crying because I couldn't afford textbooks and was considering dropping my statistics class. Mom had sighed dramatically and said, "Sarah, we've sacrificed so much for your education already. We can't keep bailing you out every semester. You need to learn to budget better." That same week, Dad posted pictures of himself on a gleaming white Sea Ray, captioned, "Dreams do come true. #blessed life, #hard work pays off." I grabbed my phone and scrolled through their social media posts from the last 4 years. The evidence was everywhere. Napa Valley wine tours. Kitchen renovations. Designer furniture. Weekend getaways to Asheville. All funded with Grandma Helen's money, my money, while I worked double shifts at Target, sold my textbooks back for grocery money, and wore the same 3 interview outfits to every job fair. Christmas was in 6 weeks. The whole extended family would be there, including Uncle Mark and Aunt Jennifer, who always praised my parents for raising such a responsible, self-sufficient daughter. Including my cousins, who got their college paid for and graduated debt-free. This year's Christmas dinner was going to be very different. The worst part wasn't just the money. It was the gaslighting. I opened my laptop and pulled up every text message, every email, every conversation where they'd made me feel like a failure for struggling financially. The digital evidence painted a picture that made me physically sick. August 15, 2020. My text to Mom, "I can't afford groceries this week. Could you help me out with $50? I promise I'll pay it back." Her response, "Sarah, your father and I are barely making ends meet ourselves. You need to apply for more scholarships or get a second job. We can't keep supporting you when you're not even trying to be financially responsible." The bank statement from that exact same week showed a $6,800 withdrawal for their essential living room furniture upgrade. I remembered Mom's Instagram post about the new leather sectional, "Sometimes you have to invest in quality. Life's too short for ugly furniture." #home is where the heart is, #blessed. I screenshot everything. Every hypocritical text message. Every social media post. Every bank withdrawal that corresponded with my most desperate moments. September 3, 2021. My panicked call to Dad when my laptop died during finals week and I couldn't afford a replacement. His exact words, "Sarah, you're 21 years old. Figure it out. Your mother and I didn't have parents bailing us out every time something went wrong. This is how you learn to be an adult." The bank statement from September 7, $4,200 withdrawal. Mom's Facebook post from September 10, surprised my hubby with a weekend in Charleston for his birthday. He works so hard and deserves the world. #spoiled husband, #Charleston, #anniversary. I had written my final papers on my phone because I couldn't afford to fix my laptop for 2 months. The more I dug, the sicker I felt. They hadn't just stolen my inheritance, they'd psychologically tortured me while doing it. Every time I'd reached out for help, they'd made me feel guilty, ungrateful, and inadequate. They'd weaponized my desperation and turned it into character assassination. I found my grandmother's letters next, tucked behind the bank statements. Grandma Helen had written to my parents regularly after setting up the college fund, always asking about my education, always emphasizing how important it was that the money be used only for Sarah's schooling, as specified in my will. One letter from 2019 particularly stood out. "I know Sarah must be so relieved to have this financial support during her studies. Please give her my love and tell her that her education was the most important thing I could leave her. I sleep well knowing she won't graduate with the burden of debt that holds back so many young people." I pressed my face into my hands and sobbed. Grandma Helen had died thinking she'd secured my future. She'd literally lost sleep worrying about my financial stability, and her last act of love had been perverted into funding my parents' lifestyle while I suffered exactly the kind of debt she tried to prevent. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom, "Don't forget we're picking out Christmas decorations tomorrow. Can't wait to show you the new dining room chandelier. It was expensive but so worth it. Family dinners will be so elegant now. The chandelier." I pulled up October's bank statement. There it was, $2,847 withdrawal on October 15th. I wiped my tears and opened a new document on my laptop. Time to start organizing my evidence. 6 weeks until Christmas dinner, and I had some serious planning to do. Uncle Mark was a lawyer. Aunt Jennifer worked for the State Banking Commission. Perfect. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and the sound of Mom humming in the kitchen. For a split second, everything felt normal, until I remembered the stolen bank statements hidden under my mattress and the $80,000 worth of evidence that my parents were thieves. Morning, sweetheart. Mom chirped as I stumbled downstairs. She was wearing the new silk pajama set she'd posted about on Instagram last month, another $340 I now knew came from my inheritance. I made your favorite blueberry pancakes. We need to fuel up for our decoration shopping. Dad looked up from his newspaper, reading glasses perched on his nose. The same reading glasses he'd claimed were too expensive when I needed new contacts junior year. Sleep well, kiddo. You look tired. I forced a smile and sat down at their renovated granite countertop, June 2020, $8,200 withdrawal. Just stayed up late job hunting. Entry-level marketing doesn't pay much, you know. That's the spirit. Dad beamed. Character building, just like we always said. Your grandmother would be so proud of how independent you've become. The pancakes turned to ash in my mouth. I excused myself and retreated to the bathroom, where I quietly threw up everything I'd just eaten. When I returned, Mom was scrolling through her phone, showing Dad pictures of Christmas centerpieces. Oh, Sarah. I forgot to tell you, the Hendersons want to feature our Christmas dinner in the church newsletter this year. Isn't that exciting? Holiday hospitality, the Wilson family's traditional celebration. They want to interview us about our family values. The irony was suffocating. Our church prided itself on biblical principles, honesty, integrity, caring for others. Dad was a deacon. Mom led the women's Bible study group where they discussed verses about greed and loving your children unconditionally. That's great, I managed. We spent the afternoon at HomeGoods, where Mom loaded our cart with $400 worth of holiday decorations, chattering about how special this Christmas would be. She paid with the same Bank of America debit card I'd seen on those statements. You know, she said while examining ornate napkin rings, your father and I have been talking about maybe helping you with those student loans once you get more established. We believe in letting you handle things independently first, but we're not heartless. I stared at her. Really? Of course, honey. Maybe in a few years, when we see you're really applying yourself and not just expecting handouts. We want to make sure you appreciate the value of money. The value of money. She said this while holding $45 napkin rings, funded by my dead grandmother's life savings. That evening, I called my cousin Jake. His parents, Uncle Mark and Aunt Jennifer, had paid for his entire college education, plus graduate school, plus helped him with a down payment on his house. He'd never worked a day during college, never ate ramen for dinner, never cried over textbook costs. Hey, Sarah. How's the job hunt going? Actually, that's kind of why I'm calling. I wanted to ask you something about inheritance law, and I thought Uncle Mark might have some insight. Jake perked up. Sure. What's going on? I took a deep breath. Hypothetically, if someone's will specify that money should be used only for education, but the trustees used it for other things instead, what would happen legally? Oh, that's embezzlement, Jake said immediately. Like, serious felony territory. Especially if it's a significant amount. Uncle Dad handled a case like that last year, family members who stole from a minor's inheritance. They got criminal charges plus had to pay everything back with interest and penalties. My hands started shaking. What if the person wasn't a minor anymore, but still didn't know? Doesn't matter. Fraud is fraud. The statute of limitations wouldn't even start until the victim discovered the theft. Why do you ask? Everything okay with your trust fund? Trust fund. Jake assumed I had one, just like he did. Yeah, everything's fine. Just curious. After we hung up, I sat in my car outside a Starbucks, hyperventilating. This wasn't just family drama or poor financial choices. This was actual crime. Felony embezzlement. My parents weren't just selfish, they were criminals who'd been gaslighting their victim for 4 years. I opened my laptop and started researching. Embezzlement in our state carried up to 10 years in prison for amounts over $50,000. Asset forfeiture. Mandatory restitution. Criminal record. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Thanks for being such a good sport about the tight budget, kiddo. Your maturity makes us so proud. Love you. I screenshot it and added it to my evidence folder. 43 days until Christmas dinner. The next few days, I threw myself into research with the intensity of someone preparing for war. Because that's exactly what this was. I discovered that Grandma Helen's will have been probated through the county courthouse, which meant all the documents were public record. Wednesday afternoon, I drove downtown during my lunch break and requested copies of everything. The clerk, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, handed me a manila folder that would change everything. That'll be $23 for copying fees, honey. $23. I put it on my credit card, the same credit card I'd been using to buy groceries because my parents had stolen my inheritance. Sitting in the courthouse parking lot, I opened the folder with shaking hands. There it was, Grandma Helen's will, along with all the probate documents. But there was something I hadn't expected. A letter from the probate attorney to my parents, dated September 15, 2018, right before my sophomore year. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, this letter serves as a formal reminder that the funds bequeathed to your daughter Sarah are restricted solely for educational expenses as explicitly stated in Mrs. Helen Patterson's will. As trustees, you are legally obligated to maintain detailed records of all expenditures and provide annual accountings to the beneficiary upon request. Please note that any use of these funds for non-educational purposes constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty and may result in legal action. They knew. They had been explicitly warned, in writing, by a lawyer, that what they were doing was illegal. My phone rang. Mom. Hi, sweetie. I'm at Costco getting things for dinner. Do you want me to grab you anything? I know you're trying to stick to a budget. I stared at the lawyer's letter, dated the same month they told me I needed to learn responsibility by taking out student loans. Actually, Mom, I wanted to ask you something. Do you remember when Grandma Helen died? Did she leave any money for my education? There was a pause. A long pause. Oh, honey, your grandmother left a small amount, but it wasn't nearly enough for college. We used it to help with your freshman year expenses. That's why you needed the loans. We tried to stretch it, but you know how expensive college is. A small amount. They were still lying to my face. How small? I don't remember exactly. Maybe 10 or 15,000. Your father handles all that financial stuff. Why are you asking? 15,000. She just reduced Grandma Helen's life savings, $127,000, to pocket change. Just curious. Thanks, Mom. I hung up and immediately called Uncle Mark's law office. Wilson and Associates, this is Rebecca. Hi, this is Sarah Wilson, Mark's niece. Is he available for a quick legal consultation? Let me check. He has 10 minutes between appointments. Hold please. Uncle Mark came on the line. Sarah. Jake mentioned you had some questions about inheritance law. What's going on? I took a deep breath. Uncle Mark, I need to ask you something, and I need you to promise you won't say anything to my parents until I figure out what to do. His tone shifted immediately. What's wrong? I think my parents have been stealing from my inheritance. I have evidence. Silence. Sarah, that's a very serious accusation. What kind of evidence? I summarized everything, the bank statements, the will, the probate lawyer's warning letter, the timeline of their spending versus my financial struggles. Jesus Christ, Uncle Mark whispered. Sarah, if what you're telling me is true, your parents have committed felony embezzlement. We're talking about criminal charges, not just civil recovery. I know. That's what Jake said. Can you bring me the documents? All of them. Today. What about Christmas? What about the family? Uncle Mark was quiet for a long moment. Honey, I love your parents, but if they've stolen $80,000 from you while watching you struggle with debt, this isn't about Christmas anymore. This is about justice. I scheduled an appointment for 5 p.m. 39 days until Christmas dinner. But first, I was going to see a lawyer. Uncle Mark's law office felt like stepping into a different world, mahogany furniture, leather-bound books, and framed diplomas that reminded me of the education I'd scraped and clawed to afford while my parents vacationed in Hawaii. His secretary, Rebecca, offered me coffee in actual china cups, not the chipped Target mugs I drank from in my studio apartment. Sarah, come in. Uncle Mark looked grim as he ushered me into his private office. At family gatherings, he was always the jovial uncle cracking dad jokes and sneaking extra dessert to the kids. Today, he looked every inch the seasoned attorney who'd built a successful practice from nothing. I spread my evidence across his massive oak desk, bank statements, Grandma Helen's will, the probate attorney's warning letter, screenshots of my parents' social media posts, my student loan statements. Uncle Mark put on his reading glasses and started examining everything methodically. The silence stretched for 20 minutes. I watched his expression grow darker with each document. This is worse than I thought, he finally said. Sarah, this isn't just embezzlement. It's aggravated embezzlement due to the amount, plus breach of fiduciary duty, plus fraud. The fact that they received explicit written warning from the probate attorney and continued stealing shows willful intent. My stomach clenched. What does that mean, practically? It means your parents could face 5 to 10 years in federal prison. The state will likely seize assets to cover restitution, their house, cars, retirement accounts, everything. Plus penalties and interest, you're looking at recovery of potentially $150,000 or more. The room started spinning. Uncle Mark, I just wanted my college money back. I didn't want to destroy their lives. He leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before answering. Based on your parents' behavior, the gaslighting, the manipulation, making you feel guilty for asking for help while they spent your inheritance, do you think this is the first time they've done something like this? What do you mean? I mean, have you ever wondered how they afforded their lifestyle on your dad's insurance sales income? The house renovations, the vacations, the boat. Your dad makes maybe $75,000 a year, and your mom's part-time job at the church brings in what, $15,000? I'd never thought about it before, but he was right. Dad sold insurance for a regional company, decent money, but not Hawaiian vacation and boat money, especially not while also paying a mortgage and regular expenses. I don't know. I assumed they were just good with money. Uncle Mark pulled out a legal pad and started writing. I want to run a more comprehensive check. With your permission, I'd like to investigate whether there were other accounts, maybe something from your grandfather's estate, or other relatives. People who steal once usually steal repeatedly. My blood ran cold. Grandpa died when I was 12. He had that farm property. The 40 acres your parents sold in 2019. The money they said went to pay off debts. I stared at him. How do you know about that? Because your grandfathers will left that property in trust for you and your future siblings, to be sold when you turn 25. Your parents needed court approval to sell it early, and they claimed financial hardship. The room tilted. They sold my land. 40 acres outside Statesville. Sold for $285,000 in March 2019. Uncle Mark's voice was gentle but firm. Sarah, I think your parents have been systematically looting your inheritances for years. The college fund was just the most recent theft. I couldn't breathe. March 2019, that was when they'd taken their anniversary trip to Hawaii and upgraded both their cars. I'd called them from campus that same month, crying because I couldn't afford to fix my transmission and might have to drop out to work full-time. How much? I whispered. Uncle Mark was already pulling up records on his computer. Conservatively. Between the college fund, the land sale, and whatever else we might find, we're probably looking at over $400,000 in stolen inheritance. $400,000. While I'd been eating ramen and working double shifts and crying over textbook costs. Uncle Mark, I think I'm going to be sick. He quickly brought me a trash can and a bottle of water. I know this is overwhelming, but Sarah, you need to understand something. Your parents aren't just selfish or irresponsible. They're career criminals who've been using you as their personal ATM while psychologically abusing you to cover their tracks. I splashed water on my face with shaking hands. What happens now? Now, we document everything and file a criminal complaint with the district attorney. We'll also pursue civil recovery to get your money back with interest and penalties. But Sarah. His expression softened. Once we start this process, there's no going back. Your relationship with your parents will be over permanently. They'll likely go to prison. The whole family will know. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Mom humming in the kitchen this morning, making my favorite pancakes with money stolen from my grandmother's life savings. I thought about Dad's proud speeches about character building while he funded his boat with my college fund. I thought about 4 years of ramen dinners and panic attacks over money while they posted vacation photos on Facebook. They made their choice when they decided to steal from me, I said quietly. I'm just making mine. Uncle Mark nodded. Then let's get to work. I'll need you to write out everything you remember, every conversation, every time they made you feel guilty for asking for help, every instance of financial manipulation. Can you do that? Yes. Good. And Sarah? Christmas dinner is going to be very interesting this year. As I walked out of his office an hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Picked up groceries for your favorite dinner tomorrow. Can't wait to spend time with our successful daughter. Love you so much. Red heart. I screenshot it and added it to my evidence folder, now labeled Wilson Family Embezzlement Case, Confidential. 38 days until Christmas. But the countdown had changed. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about justice. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Uncle Mark. My heart hammered as I called him back, expecting the worst. Sarah, thank God. I've been digging into your family's financial records since 6 a.m., and we have a massive problem. I sat up in bed, still in my childhood bedroom with its faded purple walls and participation trophies. What kind of problem? Your parents didn't just steal from you. There's a third inheritance we missed, your great-aunt Margaret's estate from 2017. She left you $85,000 for graduate school. It went into the same account structure as your other funds. My mouth went dry. Great-aunt Margaret, Dad's spinster aunt who'd been a librarian for 40 years. She died my freshman year, and I remembered Mom mentioning something about a small bequest for education. How much is left? Nothing. They cleaned it out by Christmas 2017 to pay for their kitchen renovation and that trip to Europe they took for your mom's 50th birthday. I did the math in my head. Nearly $500,000. Gone. But here's the bigger problem, Uncle Mark continued. I ran your parents' credit report as part of the asset investigation. Sarah, they're broke. Completely insolvent. The house has a $340,000 mortgage against a $280,000 property. They owe $73,000 in credit card debt. The boat has a lien against it. They've been living off your inheritances for years, and now that those are gone, they're drowning. I walked to my bedroom window, looking out at the circular driveway where Dad's BMW and Mom's Mercedes were parked. Both leased, I realized now. Nothing was actually owned. What does that mean for getting my money back? It means even if we win, which we will, there might not be anything left to recover. They've spent everything and mortgaged the rest. The bedroom door opened, and Mom poked her head in, all smiles. Morning, sweetie. You're up early. I'm making French toast for breakfast, and then I thought we could go look at Christmas lights in Davidson. The Henderson's display is supposed to be incredible this year. I covered the phone. Sounds great, Mom. Be down in a minute. She beamed and closed the door. I waited for her footsteps to fade. Uncle Mark, there's something else. I think they're planning to ask me for money. What makes you say that? Yesterday Mom mentioned maybe helping with my student loans in a few years but only if I prove I'm responsible. And last week Dad made some comment about how families should stick together during tough times. I think they're setting up to guilt me into supporting them financially. Uncle Mark was quiet for a long moment. Jesus. They steal your inheritance, watch you struggle with debt, and now they want you to bail them out of the consequences. Can we speed up the timeline? File charges before Christmas. Sarah, criminal cases take months to process. But. He paused, and I could practically hear him thinking. There might be another approach. What if we confronted them privately first? Gave them a chance to confess and agree to repayment terms before involving prosecutors. You mean like an intervention? Exactly. This weekend, before they can spend any more money or hide assets. We present the evidence, demand full confession and financial disclosure, and give them 48 hours to liquidate everything to start repayment. If they refuse or try to lie, then we file criminal charges Monday morning. My hands were shaking. Would you be there? I can't face them alone. Of course. And Sarah? We need to do this at their house, where they feel cornered and can't just leave. Saturday morning, when they're relaxed and not expecting anything. I heard Mom calling from downstairs. Sarah. French toast is getting cold. I have to go. They can't suspect anything. Be careful. And Sarah? Don't let them guilt you about anything today. Remember, they're thieves, not your loving parents. They've been acting a role for 4 years. I hung up and went downstairs, where Mom had set the table with her good china, probably bought with Great-Aunt Margaret's money. Dad was reading the newspaper, humming contentedly. There's our girl. Dad looked up with genuine warmth. Your mom went all out this morning. You'd think it was Christmas already. I sat down and took a bite of French toast that tasted like sawdust. Actually, I wanted to talk to you both about Christmas. I was thinking of having some people over here this year. Maybe Uncle Mark and Aunt Jennifer. Jake. Make it a real family gathering. Mom clapped her hands together. Oh, that's perfect. The house will look so beautiful with all the new decorations. And the dining room chandelier will make everything so elegant. Your Uncle Mark will be so impressed with what we've done with the place. Dad nodded approvingly. Great idea, kiddo. It'll be good to show everyone how well our family is doing. All that hard work and sacrifice paying off. Sacrifice. He said that word while sitting in a kitchen funded by my stolen inheritance. Actually, I said carefully, I was thinking we could do it this Saturday instead of waiting until Christmas. More intimate, you know. This Saturday. Mom looked surprised. That's awfully short notice. I already texted Uncle Mark. He's free Saturday morning. Maybe around 10 a.m. Dad shrugged. Works for me. I'll make sure the house looks perfect. Your uncle always notices details. I smiled and took another bite of French toast. Oh, he definitely notices details. He's very thorough about things like that. For days until Saturday morning. For days until my parents learned that their 4-year crime spree was over. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I barely slept, running through every possible scenario in my head. What if they denied everything? What if they broke down crying? What if they tried to turn it around and blame me somehow? Uncle Mark arrived at 9:45 a.m. sharp, carrying a leather briefcase that looked ominous in the morning light. He was dressed in his courtroom suit, navy blue, perfectly pressed, the kind of outfit that meant serious business. You ready for this? He asked quietly as we stood on the front porch. My finger hovered over the doorbell. No. But let's do it anyway. Mom answered the door in her weekend best, the cashmere sweater set she'd bought during their tight-budget phase last spring. Her face lit up when she saw Uncle Mark. Mark. How wonderful. Come in, come in. Coffee's fresh, and I made those lemon scones you love. Morning, Carol. Thanks for having me over on short notice. Dad appeared from the living room, hand extended for a hearty shake. Good to see you, Mark. Sarah said you wanted to visit, but she was pretty mysterious about why. Everything okay? Uncle Mark's expression remained neutral. Actually, Richard, we need to have a serious conversation. All 4 of us. Is there somewhere private we can sit down? Mom's smile faltered slightly. Of course. The living room? I'll just grab the coffee. This isn't a social visit, Carol, Uncle Mark said gently but firmly. Please, let's just sit. We settled into the living room, the same room where I'd grown up watching Disney movies and doing homework. The new leather furniture that had cost $6,800 of my inheritance money suddenly felt like evidence in a crime scene. Uncle Mark opened his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. The sound of papers rustling filled the silence. Richard, Carol, I'm here in my capacity as Sarah's attorney. We've uncovered some very serious financial irregularities regarding the inheritances left to Sarah by her grandmother Helen, great-aunt Margaret, and grandfather Patterson. Dad's face went completely white. Mom's coffee cup started shaking in her hands. I'm not sure what you mean, Dad said slowly. Uncle Mark spread the bank statements across the coffee table like he was dealing cards. These are the account records for Sarah's $127,000 college fund. As of yesterday, the balance is $11,247. The rest has been systematically withdrawn over 4 years and used for personal expenses, vacations, home improvements, vehicles, and luxury purchases. Mom set down her coffee cup so hard it rattled against the saucer. Mark, there must be some mistake. There's no mistake. Uncle Mark's voice cut through her protest. I also have documentation of the unauthorized sale of the Patterson family land in 2019, which netted $285,000 that should have been held in trust for Sarah until age 25. And the complete depletion of Margaret Patterson's $85,000 graduate school fund. The numbers hung in the air like accusations. Nearly $500,000. Dad cleared his throat, and when he spoke, his voice sounded different, smaller, defensive. Mark, you have to understand, we were managing those funds responsibly. College costs, living expenses, we kept detailed records. Show me the records. Silence. Show me one receipt, one tuition payment, one legitimate educational expense from any of these accounts. More silence. Mom was staring at her hands, and I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. We used some of it for household expenses that benefited Sarah, she whispered. The kitchen renovation, the new furniture, maintaining the home she grew up in. While she ate ramen for dinner and worked double shifts to afford textbooks, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken since we'd sat down. Mom's head snapped up, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across her face, not remorse, but anger. Sarah, you don't understand how expensive it is to maintain a household, to keep up appearances in this community. We sacrificed so much. You sacrificed my money, I interrupted. Money that wasn't yours to touch. Uncle Mark pulled out another document. This is the letter from the probate attorney explicitly warning you that using these funds for non-educational purposes constituted breach of fiduciary duty. It's dated September 2018. You were aware this was illegal and continued anyway. Dad's hands were shaking now too. What happens now? Uncle Mark leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. That depends entirely on what happens in the next 5 minutes. Richard, Carol, I need you to understand something. This isn't a family dispute anymore. This is felony embezzlement, wire fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. We're talking about federal charges and serious prison time. Mom made a choking sound. Prison. Mark, you can't be serious. We're family. We love Sarah. Everything we did was. Everything you did was steal from your own daughter while psychologically manipulating her into believing she was the problem. Uncle Mark's voice was ice cold. Sarah has documented every conversation where you made her feel guilty for asking for help, every time you lectured her about responsibility while spending her inheritance on luxury items. I watched my parents' faces as the reality sank in. Dad's insurance salesman composure was cracking, revealing something desperate underneath. Mom kept looking between Uncle Mark and me like she was trying to figure out which one of us she could manipulate. We can pay it back, Dad said suddenly. We'll liquidate everything. The house, the cars, everything. Just give us time. With what money? Uncle Mark pulled out another sheet of paper. I ran a complete asset analysis. You owe $340,000 on a house worth $280,000. Your combined credit card debt is $73,000. The boat you bought with Sarah's college fund has a $32,000 lien against it. You've been living beyond your means for years, and now that you've exhausted Sarah's inheritances, you're financially insolvent. The color drained completely from Mom's face. How do you know about our credit cards? Because when someone commits financial crimes against my client, I investigate everything. Uncle Mark's tone was matter-of-fact, professional. Your financial house of cards is collapsing, and you were planning to make Sarah your next victim, weren't you? Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I don't know what you mean. Really? Then explain this. Uncle Mark pulled out his phone and read from his notes. Carol, you told Sarah last week that you might help with her student loans in a few years if she proved herself responsible. Richard, you made a comment about families sticking together during tough times. You were setting up to guilt her into financially supporting you after you'd already stolen $500,000 from her. I felt sick watching them squirm. These were the people who'd raised me, who'd tucked me in at night and taught me to ride a bike. And they'd been planning to bleed me dry even further. That's not. Mom started, then stopped. Her shoulders sagged in defeat. Here's what's going to happen, Uncle Mark continued. You have exactly 48 hours to provide complete financial disclosure, every account, every asset, every debt. You will sign over power of attorney for the liquidation of all your possessions to begin repayment. And you will sign a full confession detailing every theft, every manipulation, every lie you told Sarah over the past 4 years. And if we refuse? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Then Monday morning, I file criminal charges with the federal prosecutor's office. Bank fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, aggravated embezzlement. You'll both be looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Your church friends will read about it in the newspaper. Your insurance clients will find new agents. Everyone in this tight-knit community you care so much about will know exactly what kind of people you really are. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 10:30 a.m. The sound echoed through the silent living room like a countdown. Mom looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Sarah, honey, please. We never meant for things to go this far. We love you so much. I stared at her, remembering all the times I'd called home crying about money while she'd been planning another vacation. If you loved me, I said quietly, you wouldn't have stolen my future and then tried to make me feel guilty about struggling. The truth hung in the air between us, sharp and irreversible. 46 hours until their deadline. And everything was about to change forever. The silence stretched until Dad finally spoke, his voice cracking. Sarah, you have to understand. We never wanted you to struggle. We thought we could replace the money before you found out. The insurance business has been good, and we figured we'd just pay it all back with interest. I almost laughed. Replace it? Dad, you've had 4 years. Instead of paying it back, you bought a boat. The boat was an investment, he said desperately. We were going to start a charter business on Lake Norman. Generate income to pay everything back. Uncle Mark raised an eyebrow. A charter business that never materialized while the boat sits in your driveway depreciating. Richard, do you hear yourself right now? Mom suddenly stood up, pacing to the window. When she turned back, her expression had shifted from tears to something harder. You know what? Fine. We made mistakes. But Sarah, we gave you everything growing up. Private school tuition until 8th grade. Dance lessons. Summer camps. That trip to Europe for your high school graduation. We sacrificed. You sacrificed my money. I stood up too, my voice rising. Every single thing you just mentioned was paid for with inheritances that weren't yours to touch. We're your parents. We were managing your finances responsibly. Uncle Mark's voice cut through our shouting. Carol, sit down. Now. Something in his tone made her comply immediately. Let me explain something to both of you, Uncle Mark continued, pulling out yet another document. I spent yesterday afternoon with a forensic accountant. We traced every single withdrawal from Sarah's accounts. The Europe trip. $8,300 from Helen's college fund. The private school tuition. Margaret's graduate school money. Even the dance lessons and summer camps were funded by Sarah's grandfather's land trust. My legs went weak. I sank back into the stolen leather chair. Everything. Everything, Sarah. Your parents haven't paid for your upbringing with their own money since you were 12 years old. They've been using you as their personal trust fund for a decade. Dad buried his face in his hands. We were going to tell you eventually. When you were older, more mature. We wanted you to appreciate. Appreciate what? I whispered. Appreciate being lied to. Appreciate having my future stolen while you lectured me about character building. Mom sat back down, but her defensive posture remained. Sarah, you're being dramatic. Families help each other. That money was always going to benefit you indirectly. Indirectly? Uncle Mark's voice was deadly quiet. Carol, your daughter is $89,000 in debt for an education that should have been completely paid for. She's been skipping meals and working double shifts while you've been posting vacation photos on Facebook. In what universe is that benefiting her indirectly? The room fell silent except for the sound of rain starting to patter against the windows. I watched my parents, really looked at them, and saw strangers. The loving, sacrificial parents I believed in my whole life were figments of my imagination, constructed from lies and manipulation. There's one more thing, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. Yesterday I got a call from Sally Mae about consolidating my student loans. The payment counselor asked me why I didn't use my college fund instead of taking out loans. Apparently, other families in similar situations usually do that. Mom's face went ashen. Sarah. I told her my parents said the fund wasn't big enough to cover college. She said that was strange, because most grandparents who set up education funds usually save significant amounts. So I asked her what significant meant. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the screenshot I'd taken of our conversation. She said anything over $100,000 would have covered my entire education with money left over for graduate school. Dad made a sound like he'd been punched. So I started wondering, I continued, what kind of parents watch their child go into debt when they have $100,000 sitting right there? And then I realized, the kind of parents who never actually had their child's best interests at heart. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against the roof like an accusation. Uncle Mark checked his watch. It's 11:15. You have until Monday morning at 9 a.m. to make your decision. But before we leave, there's one more thing Sarah needs to know. He pulled out a final document from his briefcase, and I could see my parents' faces go from pale to gray. What now? I asked, though I wasn't sure I could handle another revelation. Your parents took out a life insurance policy on your grandmother Helen 6 months before she died. A $50,000 policy with themselves as beneficiaries. The words hit me like a physical blow. What are you saying? I'm saying they were planning this long before your grandmother passed away. This wasn't opportunistic theft, Sarah. This was premeditated financial abuse spanning years. Mom shot to her feet again, her composure finally cracking completely. That's not what happened. Mark, you're twisting everything. We took out that policy because Mom was getting older and we knew there would be medical expenses. Medical expenses that were never paid from the policy proceeds, Uncle Mark interrupted. The entire $50,000 went toward your kitchen renovation in 2018. I stared at my parents, these people I'd loved and trusted my entire life. You bet on Grandma dying. Sarah, no, it wasn't like that, Dad said desperately. Insurance is just responsible planning. While you were planning her funeral expenses, you were already spending my college fund on vacation packages, I said, my voice eerily calm. I found the Hawaii booking confirmations in your email. You booked that trip 2 weeks after her diagnosis. The grandfather clock chimed 11:30, and something inside me snapped. I walked to the mantelpiece where dozens of family photos were displayed, graduations, holidays, birthdays, all of us smiling like we were the perfect American family. You know what the worst part is? I picked up my high school graduation photo, the one where we're all beaming because I'd gotten into state with a partial scholarship. I used to brag about you to my friends. Sarah Wilson, the girl whose parents taught her the value of hard work and independence. I actually felt sorry for my roommate freshman year because her parents were too easy on her by paying her tuition. I set the photo down and turned to face them. I defended you. When other students complained about helicopter parents or parents who spoiled them, I would say how grateful I was to have parents who were teaching me real-world responsibility. Mom was crying openly now, but I felt nothing watching her tears. Every single time I called home stressed about money, you made me feel weak and ungrateful. You turned my desperation into a character flaw while you were literally stealing my security. We were trying to teach you, Dad started. You were trying to cover up your crimes, I cut him off. And the sick part is, it almost worked. I actually believed I was the problem. Uncle Mark stood up, closing his briefcase with a decisive snap. Sarah, we should go. Richard, Carol, you know the terms. Full financial disclosure and signed confession by Monday at 9 a.m., or we file federal charges. This is the only offer you'll get. As we reached the front door, Mom called out one last time. Sarah, please. We can work this out as a family. Don't let Mark poison you against us. We love you. I turned back to look at her, this woman who'd made my favorite pancakes just days ago while planning to manipulate me into funding her retirement. If this is what your love looks like, I said quietly, I'll take my chances without it. The door closed behind us with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything I'd ever believed about my family. 64 hours until Monday morning. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of brutal clarity that only comes after your entire world has been shredded and reassembled overnight. I'd spent Saturday night in a hotel room, couldn't bear the thought of staying in that house with them, staring at the ceiling and trying to process the fact that my entire childhood had been funded by theft. Uncle Mark called at 7 a.m. Sarah, we have a problem. Your parents hired an attorney. I sat up in the scratchy hotel bed, my stomach immediately nodding. What kind of attorney? Criminal defense. Mitchell and Associates, they're expensive and ruthless. This means your parents are gearing up to fight rather than cooperate. Through the hotel room window, I could see families loading up their cars for church, looking wholesome and normal. Everything I thought my family was. What does that mean for tomorrow? It means they're going to try to flip this somehow. Make you look like the ungrateful child, them like the misunderstood parents. Sarah, I need you to prepare for them to get nasty. As if on cue, my phone started buzzing. Mom's contact photo, the two of us at last Christmas, both smiling like we didn't have a care in the world, filled my screen. Don't answer it, Uncle Mark said. Anything they say now could be a trap. I declined the call, but immediately a text came through. Sarah, please call us. We've been up all night talking and praying. There's so much you don't understand about the family finances. We can explain everything if you just give us a chance. We love you more than anything. Mom. Then another, your mother is heartbroken. How can you believe Mark over your own parents? We raised you better than this. Call us. Dad. And another, Sarah, I'm looking at your baby pictures right now. Remember when you were 6 and wanted a pony for Christmas? We worked double shifts for months to make that happen. How can you throw away 22 years of love over money? Mom. They're trying to manipulate you even now, Uncle Mark said, reading the texts over my shoulder. Classic emotional manipulation tactics. But the messages kept coming. We never told you this, but we took out a second mortgage in 2015 to pay for your SAT prep and college application fees. We've been struggling financially for years, all for you. Your grandmother specifically told us to use our judgment about the inheritance timing. She trusted us to know what was best for you. We found out yesterday that Mark is having financial problems with his own practice. Did you know he's being sued by 3 former clients? Maybe his motives aren't as pure as you think. That last one made my hands shake. I looked at Uncle Mark. Is that true? His jaw tightened. There are some ongoing disputes with former clients, yes. But Sarah, that has nothing to do with. What kind of disputes? Uncle Mark sighed, suddenly looking older. One client claims I overcharged for services. Another says I mishandled their case timeline. Nothing criminal, just civil suits over legal fees and professional conduct. My phone buzzed again. Sarah, we hired our own investigator. Mark owes $200,000 in malpractice insurance claims. He's desperate for money. What if he's planning to take a percentage of whatever he recovers from us? Have you signed any fee agreements with him? I stared at the text, my certainty starting to waver. Uncle Mark, are you taking a percentage? Sarah, you're my niece. I'm doing this pro bono. That's not what I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. If we recover damages, yes, I would typically take a contingency fee. That's standard legal practice. The room started spinning again. My parents were criminals, but Uncle Mark also had financial motives. Who could I actually trust? Another text, we've scheduled a family meeting for tonight at 6 p.m. Pastor Williams will be there to mediate. Please come home so we can work this out with love and forgiveness, the way Jesus would want. Your father and I haven't slept or eaten since yesterday. We're making ourselves sick with worry about you. Pastor Williams. The man who'd baptized me, who'd known our family for 15 years. If they were bringing in a pastor, maybe they really did want to make things right. Don't even think about it, Uncle Mark said, reading my expression. Sarah, they're playing every card they have, emotional manipulation, attacking my credibility, bringing in religious authority figures. These are the tactics of people who know they're guilty. But doubt was creeping in. What if there was more to the story? What if I was missing something crucial? My phone rang. Pastor Williams himself. 18 hours until the deadline, and everything was getting more complicated by the minute. Against Uncle Mark's advice, I answered Pastor Williams' call. Sarah, sweetheart, I'm so sorry to hear about this family crisis. His familiar, gentle voice made my eyes well up immediately. Your parents came to see me this morning, and they're absolutely devastated. They love you so much. I walked to the hotel window, watching normal families head to Sunday service. Pastor Williams, did they tell you what they did? They told me there's been some confusion about family finances and inheritance money. Sarah, I've known your parents for 15 years. They're good Christian people who've made enormous sacrifices for you. Sometimes in families, misunderstandings about money can. It's not a misunderstanding, I interrupted. They stole nearly $500,000 from me over 10 years. There was a pause. Sarah, that's a very serious accusation. Your mother showed me some of the financial records this morning. The inheritance money was used for legitimate family expenses, your education, maintaining the home you grew up in, family needs. That's not theft, that's responsible parenting. My stomach dropped. They were rewriting history even faster than I'd expected. Pastor Williams, they spent my college fund on vacations while I took out $89,000 in student loans. But Sarah, your mother explained that the college fund wasn't nearly enough to cover your full education costs. They used what they could and supplemented it with loans to teach you financial responsibility. Many parents do that. I could hear Uncle Mark making frantic, hang-up gestures, but I needed to understand how deep their manipulation went. Did they mention the land my grandfather left me? Or my great-aunt Margaret's graduate school fund? Another pause, longer this time. Sarah, I think there's been some miscommunication here. Your parents are meeting with their financial advisor this afternoon to prepare a complete accounting of all family finances. They want full transparency. Their criminal defense attorney, you mean? Sarah Elizabeth Wilson. Pastor Williams' tone shifted to the one he'd used when I was caught sneaking candy during children's service. I'm disappointed in you. Your parents are in my office right now, crying and praying for wisdom about how to help their daughter who's been turned against them by outside influences. They're talking about taking out a third mortgage to pay off your student loans, just to prove their love for you. A third mortgage. On a house already $60,000 underwater. They want you to come to the church tonight at 6 p.m. for a family reconciliation meeting. We'll go through everything together, all the financial records, all the misunderstandings. We'll pray about it and find a solution that honors both your concerns and your parents' hearts. I caught my reflection in the hotel window, 22 years old, broke, alone, doubting everything I thought I knew. Pastor Williams, can I ask you something? If someone's grandmother left money specifically for college, and the parents spent it on renovations and vacations instead, what would you call that? I would call it a family working together to make the best decisions for everyone involved. Sarah, money isn't more important than family. Your parents didn't steal from you, they invested your inheritance in your upbringing and your family's stability. Uncle Mark was shaking his head vigorously, pointing at his watch. I'll think about tonight, I said quietly. I'll be praying for you, sweetheart. Remember, honor thy father and mother. That's not a suggestion. After hanging up, I sat on the hotel bed feeling like I was drowning. They're good, Uncle Mark said grimly. They've got the pastor completely convinced this is just a family misunderstanding. My phone showed 12 more texts from Mom, each one more heartbreaking than the last. 6 hours until the church meeting. 14 hours until our Monday morning deadline. And I had no idea who was telling me the truth anymore. I decided to go to the church meeting, but not for the reasons my parents hoped. I needed to see their performance firsthand, to understand exactly how they planned to manipulate the narrative. Uncle Mark insisted on coming with me, despite my parents' protests that this was family only. The conference room at Riverside Baptist felt smaller than I remembered, with its beige walls covered in inspirational posters about forgiveness and family values. Pastor Williams had arranged 5 chairs around a circular table, very intentional, we're all equal here. My parents sat together, holding hands like a united front. Mom had clearly been crying for hours, her eyes were swollen and red-rimmed. Dad looked haggard, his usually perfect hair disheveled. Thank you for coming, Sarah, Pastor Williams began. I've asked your parents to bring all their financial documentation so we can clear up any confusion. Dad slid a manila folder across the table. Sarah, sweetheart, I want you to see that we've kept records of everything. Every penny of your inheritance money went toward family expenses that benefited you directly. I opened the folder, Uncle Mark leaning over my shoulder. Inside were dozens of receipts, bank statements, and handwritten notes. At first glance, it looked comprehensive, official. Then I started reading the details. This shows $8,500 for educational enrichment activities in March 2019, I said slowly. What educational activities? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. That was when we took you to Hawaii for spring break your sophomore year. Remember? You said it was the best week of your life, that you learned so much about marine biology seeing the coral reefs. I stared at her. Mom, I didn't go to Hawaii in 2019. I worked double shifts at Target during spring break because I couldn't afford groceries. A long pause. Pastor Williams frowned, flipping through his own notes. Dad cleared his throat. You're right, that was our mistake. We meant to take you on that educational trip, but then you said you needed to work instead. The money had already been allocated, so we went ahead and used it for family bonding time. Family bonding time that I wasn't part of. But we brought you back souvenirs, Mom added desperately. And we took so many pictures to share with you. You benefited from our experiences. Uncle Mark made a disgusted sound. Carol, do you hear yourself right now? Pastor Williams held up a hand. Let's stay focused on resolution here. Richard, what about this $12,000 withdrawal from June 2020? Dad shuffled through his papers. Bathroom renovation. Sarah's bathroom that she used every time she came home from college. I came home twice that summer, I said. For a total of 8 days. But it was still your bathroom, Mom insisted. We wanted you to have a beautiful, comfortable space when you visited. That heated floor cost extra, but we thought you deserved luxury. I looked around the table at these people, my parents, my childhood pastor, my uncle. Everyone had an agenda. Everyone was trying to manipulate the narrative in their favor. Pastor Williams, I said quietly, can I show you something? I pulled out my phone and opened my text messages from that summer. June 15, 2020. I texted Mom asking for help buying groceries because I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her response was, we're struggling too, Sarah. Learn to budget better. I scrolled to the next screenshot. June 18, 2020. Mom's Facebook post about her beautiful new bathroom renovation. Sometimes you have to invest in your home. Heated floors are life-changing. Hashtag blessed, hashtag home improvement. The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lighting. 3 days, I continued. 3 days between telling me she couldn't help me buy food and posting about her luxury bathroom upgrade. Pastor Williams looked genuinely troubled for the first time. Carol, Richard, this is concerning. Mom burst into fresh tears. You don't understand the pressure we were under. Trying to maintain appearances in this community, keeping up the house, making sure Sarah had a good home to come back to. We never meant for her to struggle. Then why didn't you use my college fund for college? Silence. 2 hours until their Monday morning deadline, and I finally understood that some people will lie even to God himself if it serves their purposes. The silence stretched until Pastor Williams cleared his throat uncomfortably. Sarah, your parents have asked me to share something with you. Something they've been hesitant to discuss because they didn't want to burden you. Dad reached across the table, his hand shaking slightly. Sweetheart, your mother was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer in 2019. We didn't tell you because you were stressed about school, and we wanted to handle it privately. My blood went cold. Mom pulled down the collar of her sweater, revealing a small scar near her collarbone. The treatments, the specialists, the alternative medicine therapies not covered by insurance. Sarah, we used some of your inheritance money for my medical care. We didn't have a choice. I stared at the scar, feeling my carefully constructed case beginning to crumble. Why didn't you tell me? Because you had enough to worry about, Mom whispered. We wanted to protect you. Some of those Hawaii pictures. I was recovering from surgery. Dad took me there because the doctor said warm weather and relaxation would help with healing. Uncle Mark leaned forward, his expression skeptical. Carol, if that's true, there should be medical bills, insurance claims, documentation. There are, Dad interrupted, pulling out another folder. We have everything. Hospital bills, oncology appointments, prescription receipts. It's all here. I took the medical folder with trembling hands. The letterhead was legitimate, Southeast Cancer Center, Charlotte Presbyterian Hospital. The dates matched the timeline of major withdrawals from my accounts. $15,000 for experimental immunotherapy treatment in September 2021. $8,500 for a specialized nutrition program in March 2019. The boat, I said weakly. What about the boat? Mom's voice cracked. The doctor said I needed stress relief activities. Something to look forward to during treatment. We thought boating would be therapeutic. Family time on the water. Pastor Williams nodded approvingly. Sometimes medical recovery requires investments in mental health and family bonding. I felt Uncle Mark tense beside me. This is convenient, he said coldly. Medical records that perfectly explain every major withdrawal, presented only after we discovered the theft. Dad's composure finally snapped. Theft. We're talking about my wife's cancer treatment, Mark. How dare you? How dare I what? Point out that you've had 2 days to manufacture evidence. Mark. Pastor Williams's voice was sharp. That's enough. These are grieving, frightened parents trying to save their family. I stared at the medical records, my certainty dissolving. The dates were right. The amounts matched. Mom's scar looked real. But something still felt wrong. Mom, I said quietly, if you were sick, if you needed money for treatment, why didn't you just ask me? I would have given you anything. She reached across the table to touch my hand. Because you were our baby. Our job was to protect you, not burden you with our problems. But you let me struggle with student loans while you were using my money for medical bills. We thought the loans would be good for you, Dad said earnestly. Character building. We were planning to pay them off as a graduation gift, but then Mom's treatments got more expensive. Uncle Mark checked his watch. It's 8:15. We have 45 minutes before the courthouse opens. Pastor Williams stood up. I think we need more time. This is clearly a complicated family situation that requires prayer and careful consideration, not hasty legal action. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sarah, this is Rebecca from your uncle's office. Emergency, need to speak with you immediately about the Wilson case. Medical records show discrepancies. I looked up at Uncle Mark, who was checking his own phone with a frown. 30 minutes until the deadline, and nothing was what it seemed. Rebecca's urgent message made my stomach drop, but I couldn't leave now, not when I was so close to the truth. I forwarded her text to Uncle Mark, who immediately stepped outside to call his office. Sarah, Pastor Williams said gently, why don't we schedule another meeting next week? Give everyone time to process. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. I've spent 4 years being told to wait, to be patient, to trust the process. I'm done waiting. Uncle Mark returned, his face grim. Sarah, we need to go. Now. What did Rebecca find? The medical records are fake. The letterhead is real, your parents probably scanned it from legitimate bills, but the treatment dates and amounts are fabricated. Southeast Cancer Center has no record of your mother receiving immunotherapy in 2021. Mom's face went ashen. That's impossible. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Carol. Uncle Mark's voice was deadly calm. My secretary used to work medical billing. She spotted the formatting errors immediately. Treatment codes that don't match procedures. Billing addresses that don't exist. Pastor Williams looked genuinely shocked. Richard, Carol, please tell me this isn't true. The silence was deafening. Then Dad's shoulders sagged, and something in his expression shifted, from desperation to defeat. We needed more time. We thought if we could just explain the circumstances differently. You forged medical records. I whispered. You faked having cancer. Mom started sobbing, but they weren't tears of remorse, they were tears of someone whose last manipulation had failed. Sarah, we love you so much. Everything we did was because we wanted to give you the best life possible. Stop. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Just stop lying. I can't listen to another word. Pastor Williams removed his glasses, suddenly looking exhausted. Richard, Carol, I think you need to leave. Sarah, I owe you an apology. I should have listened more carefully. Uncle Mark checked his watch. It's 8:45. Sarah, what do you want to do? I looked at my parents, these people who'd raised me, loved me, and systematically destroyed my financial future while gaslighting me into believing I was ungrateful. Mom was still crying, reaching for me across the table. Dad was staring at his hands, finally out of excuses. For the first time in 4 years, I felt completely clear about what I needed to do. File the charges, I said quietly. All of them. Uncle Mark nodded. Criminal complaint will be filed within the hour. As we walked toward the door, Mom called out one last time. Sarah, please. We can still fix this as a family. I turned back to look at her, this woman who'd made my favorite pancakes while planning to steal my future, who'd faked cancer to justify theft, who'd spent 10 minutes ago trying to convince a pastor that stealing from your own child was an act of love. We were never a family, I said. We were just a scam you ran for 22 years. 6 months later, I received a check for $127,000 in recovered funds, plus interest and penalties. The house sold at auction. The boat was repossessed. Dad got 18 months in federal prison, Mom got 12 months plus community service. I paid off my student loans in full and started graduate school debt-free, exactly what Grandma Helen had intended. Sometimes people ask if I ever regret destroying my relationship with my parents. The answer is simple, I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending it had ever existed in the first place. That's why I hate my parents. Not because they stole money, but because they stole something far more valuable, the ability to trust that the people who claim to love you actually have your best interests at heart. But here's what they couldn't steal, my future. And that future, built on the foundation of my grandmother's true love rather than my parents' lies, is better than anything they ever could have given me.